Magnolia may have gotten a short end of the stick, Megumi may be losing in the enemy with really silly plays and an even stupider deck list, but you know what, she's still kind of bait and this deck's absolutely killing it. Hey, what's going on guys, I'm Mr. here. Today I am back to cover Magnolia in set 9. Now you may be wondering, why am I covering Magnolia now after, all this time? It's been really long since I've done a Magnolia deck profile. And for good reason. Magnolia so far has been, very notorious. We got Magnolia Elder in DBT04, and that thing was an absolute meta killer with inlit pulse, and then after that it got banned and then it became irrelevant. Then Magnolia received drips of support here and there. Then Magnolia Elder got unbanned with inlet pulse, and then they got set 7, they received set 9. I'm bridging the timeline, but the long and short of it is that Magnolia has gone through a lot of ups and a lot of downs, especially more downs in the more recent years, ever since I've done the Magnolia deck profile all the way back in DBT02. Like, wow, that's been a while. But today we are gonna change that. We're gonna actually cover Magnolia today, and today we're gonna go through the new stuff in set 9, because the new stuff in set 9 is very interesting. It supports a Magnolia that we've not seen before, and that is the Silver Horn Beast right line. And it's really more centered on that, as well as more beatdowns, more built around the original intent of Magnolia. So this list is meant to capitalize on the set 9 support. So if you see stuff that doesn't make sense to you, or you feel, oh, this is not my preferred Magnolia, then just leave this video. It will do you a lot better. But if not, if you're willing to sit through and see what I have ready in store for you, then let's actually go through the right line. The right line, we play the Grade 0 Silver Horn Beast, the Grade 1 Silver Horn Beast Charis, the Grade 2 Silver Horn Beast Lattice, and of course Magnolia. So that is our right deck. It is pure Silver Horn Beast. We don't play the we don't play the order package, we don't play any other package, we don't play the Rora stuff. We don't at all. And because we really want the interaction here, we are going to actually just go through this whole list, just in case you've forgotten or you've never seen this right line before. So this is the Grade 0, it's a little cat. The Grade 1 is Charis, when rode upon by Lattice. You look at the top card of your deck, and you can super call it if it's Grade 2 or less. If not, you have to put it into the drop zone if you simply cannot call. So yeah, that is simply what it is. It's quite a simple card actually, but you realize that, sorry, Charis, you put it into your soul, not drop. You put it into the soul. Okay, that's not bad. So you can put any grade 3s or any orders into the soul. Now that matters because we do play grade 3s and we do play orders in this deck. Okay, so you might want to know that. Skill on the back row is that he gains 5,000 power during the battle that he attacks. It's a continuous skill. So yeah, it's simple as that. Then we move on to Lattice. Lattice has similar skills. When rode upon by Magnolia, use Soul Blast 1. So you can Soul Blast itself if you wish, but there are other cards you would like to Soul Blast. We'll go through that later. Review the top card of your deck. If it's a unique card, you can call it. If not, you put it into your hand. So you can actually straight up add orders now to your hand, which is pretty cool. But if not, you have to call it no matter what it is. So yeah, it is a downside. There's a reason why people weren't really a fan of the Magnolia right line, but we can use the most of it. You'll be surprised. The last skill is back row, rear guard circle. When he attacks, Soul Blast 1 and it gains 10. But we have stronger cards than this, so you don't worry about it. And then last but not least, we have Magnolia. Magnolia's skill itself is at the end of the battle that he attacks, Count Blast 1, choose one of your own rear guards, and it can attack from the back row and it gains 5,000 power. If you have Persona Road this turn, all of your back row rear guards get this effect instead of itself. So basically, on turn 3, you can have 4 attacks. On turn 4, if you manage to Persona right, you get 6 attacks. Which is pretty damn cool, no matter who you ask. So now you may be wondering, with a right line like that, people have chosen to play superior, stronger, or just different right lines, like, the order right line. But why are we specifically playing this? Well, there are a few reasons. So I'll move this to the edge of the map just so you can see. But for me to really break it down, you'll have to see the rest of this list to accept it. So moving on to our grade 3s, we play 3 copies of Magnolia in the right deck, in the main deck, and 3 copies of Windsor Blue. So, yes, it is a Winnie the Pooh reference. Oh my goodness, you can tell people you won with the Winnie the Pooh deck, which I actually have. I've been winning a lot with this deck, a lot of locals. So, yeah, a lot of fun, interesting games with this. So, why am I playing like this? Of course, we play one Magnolia in the right deck. 3, because this is a Persona right based deck. So, you got to max out on your copies. It's as simple as that. It's a Persona right. You just want to find it as fast as possible. We don't play the Chalice. I actually do own the Chalice, but I don't play it because it competes with your order slot, and you don't have enough space in this deck. If I had, I would play 4 copies of Windsor Pooh. Windsor Pooh has a very interesting skills from the deck or the hand. As long as your Vanguard has Sylvan Horn Beast in its name, it gets grade -1. That means it's a grade 2, which means you can call it during your lattice turn, and that, my friends, is pretty insane. So now you straight up get the chance to call a grade 3 during your grade 2 turn, which is really fun for early aggression. That's why I like this deck. It has a lot of early aggression. It can fight Jet, but it scales, and if your Magnolia Vanguard is placed during this turn, he gains an additional 10,000 power, which means that on your turn 3, when you ride Magnolia, you ride that Magnolia, you have this guy in the front row. He's a 23k attacker for free, which is really good if you manage to pull it off. Of course, all he is just an attacker. He's just a big fat attacker that eats honey, which is not very good, which is why we play 3 off. But frankly, if I had more space, I would like to play a 4th one. I just really like Windsor Pooh. I cannot even stop to tell you how much I really like these cards. But 3 is still fine. If I had a choice, I may cut Alpin down to play one more of him. But at this point in time, I'm still not 100% sure. I still feel Alpin's a safer choice because of what Alpin has to offer. But really, what you choose to do is fine. Just, since you're playing the Sylvan Horn Beast right line, this guy's really good. At least from my testing, it's been really insane. Now we're moving on to our grade 2s. Our grade 2s are even more simpler. We play 1 Lattice in the right deck, and then we play 4 copies of Sylvan Horn Beast Golidot. Golidot is one of the newer cards from this set. It's also a Dbt09 Stoicheia. We play 4 copies of Dynamaru. We play 4 copies of Alpin. So we have the best of all triple rares from the Sylvan Horn Beast Grade 2 lineup. Of course, we are still missing a few like Gabrek. We are still missing a few like Pantero. We are obviously not playing Elder, but I will explain some of the other choices because there are quite a few choices like Gnosia as well. So I will want to dive into that and why we are not using them. So first of all, I'll go on with Golidot. Golidot is one of the most broken cards in my opinion when it comes to actual Magnolia support. It does so much in so little. It surprises me that they thought it was okay to print this. In Magnolia Elder, this card is an insane 6-off, but in this deck it's still fine. And there are ways you can actually play it even though it's clearly meant for Elder. When your Vanguard with Magnolia is placed from the drop zone, if your soul does not have a copy of this card, which is Golidot, you can move this card into the soul and your Vanguard gains an additional 5,000 power. This is when Magnolia is placed. Mind you, there is a card that has a Soul Blast interaction when Magnolia is placed. So when you ride Magnolia, you slide Golidot from drop zone into the soul, then you Soul Blast him out. So not only do you pay 0 cost for that Soul Blast, you just gave your Magnolia an additional 5,000 power, which is huge considering the fact that Magnolia is traditionally your weakest attacker in the deck. So keep in mind the implications here. But it has a second skill. On the back row circle, when it attacks, you can have this unit gain 10,000 power. At the end of the battle, you may retire this card, and if you do, you get to draw a card, which is really good. It is like Inlet Pulse, and it really just floats back to the center back row. It really just floats back to the drop zone, and then after that you can trigger the skill again. You can just move into the soul next turn when you ride and gains another 5,000 power. It's really good. It's a 20k attacker that cycles itself and draws, and it has that soul interaction. But that soul interaction is not just all it does. Besides that, you can slide into the soul and also bring it back out to pay the cost for other cards, which you'll see for that free 5,000 power, the free 10,000 power, and the draw. Golidot, despite how much I'm praising it, is a 1-for-1. Technically speaking, when it moves to the soul, it doesn't draw a card or anything. It just gives you 5,000 power. When you draw a card, you also retire the card. So it is a net 0 card, but considering the amount of zones it touches, considering what it does, even though we're playing base Magnolia, not Magnolia Elder. This card does wonders in Elder. This is still a card worth playing, in my opinion. If you're a Magnolia player, you should be playing at least 3 to 4 copies of this. No question. Since we are playing around the original Magnolia, then it makes 100% sense to play Dynamaru. Dynamaru is from our previous Magnolia deck profile, which tells you how much time has passed. When placed on the Vanguard circle, if your Vanguard, specifically the Grade 3 Magnolia, this edition, so +1, choose one of your rear guards and it can attack from the back row and it gains 5000 power. So Dynamaru basically has a pocket version of the skill that Magnolia has. So on turn 3, you can now make 5 attacks. But if it's chosen by Magnolia's ability, it gains an additional 5000 power once per turn. So basically speaking, Dynamaru can be a 15 to 20k attacker. By choosing skill, it goes up from 15 and then to 20. And it also on play still has the skill to grant other units the multi-attack, which is insane considering the fact that, this is your only other way of enabling multi-attack besides Magnolia itself. So keep that in mind. Last but not least, we play Alpin. Alpin is from set 7. It's one of the later cards, and it's quite impressive. When it attacks, if your Vanguard is Magnolia, for every 2 of your grade 2 or greater units, this unit gains 5000 power. If it gains 10,000 power through this effect, you may bind this unit, and you can counter charge and soul charge. The -1 is not like Golodode, where it cycles itself for a draw. In fact, you cycle it for a counter charge and a soul charge, which is a -1 to, get resources back. It's a lot like Price Trident for those that played it in Magnolia Set 3. It's alright, but it's not a skill you use often. It's a skill that, if used correctly, you can go up to plus 10,000 power because, you have 4 grade 2 or greater units, so it traditionally doesn't really fail you. That is one of its upsides. It gains free power, then you can choose to bind it if you want to counter charge and soul charge. You can also use this, it's not tied to any circle, which means you can actually use Magnolia's skill and its skill with one counter blast tying in with another counter blast user, which is literally any counter blast user. So if you are CB gated because let's say you played, spoiler, WoW Intelligence, then you can eventually just use Alpin to unpay the cost of the WoW Intelligence because you went plus, you can minus a bit and then trigger Magnolia skill, and you can effectively still do your full combo in one counter blast, which is insane. So Alpin is there to really help you against those people who are resource gating you. It's an out that is very important to people who want to play Magnolia more consistently. But I understand that it's just not that great of a card nowadays, especially given our current meta. But you can actually call this down and rush with it, and then after that on the 3 triggered skill with Magnolia in his name. But it's still not that great of a card, but just know that it is one of the options you can do. Magnolia is a deck that really turns out alive during your turn 3 when Magnolia is placed, with the exception of Windsor-Pooh, who can come out a turn earlier. But even Windsor-Pooh reaches its full potential only when you ride Magnolia. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Now, I want to quickly go through the rest of the options for this deck before I run out of the chance to do so. Unbar is tied to the original Magnolia as well. That it can, when placed, it can gain 5000 power and 5000 shield, which means it's a 10,000 point shield and a 13k attacker for the turn, which is nice. And at the end of the battle, you can actually move it back into the hand. So it bounces itself back, it can place a shield, it can constantly be on place. It's not bad. It really isn't that bad as a defensive option, but frankly speaking, Enbar just doesn't do enough for the current meta game, if you ask me. Like, you don't really need this kind of cards to play defensively for Magnolia. You kind of want to play more offensively. If you want to talk about defensively, we also have Npix, who in my opinion helps, but we don't really have that much of a control meta. Npix, for those of you who don't remember what he does, is that on the center back row, he gains 10, not center back row, just back row in general, he gains 10,000 power, and if you have 3 or less units, they can't be, targeted. Which is nice, it gives the whole board evasion, but what are you evading from? Like, no one uses Jet Strike skill, Youth Book doesn't really walk around these days, Grand Fear doesn't retire, Welshra, I guess, Eva, yeah, but like, you want to crush Rush instead of having an 18k attacker that only becomes alive on turn 3 or greater. Like, realistically, what does this do for you? Then we also have stuff like Genosia. Genosia is from set 1. Annabelle attacks Counterblast 1, choose its power, and copy its power to another unit. That's really cool, but like I was describing with Alpin here, you don't really have the resources to even go full combo with one counterblast. What makes you think you have the spare resources to pay for Gnosia, which you don't? And this meta, you can go 1 to 5 with Fate Rider, which should not be happening, but in these current circumstances, I just wouldn't recommend this. And with the Messiah Strike deck set, we have even more lesser board. Like it's just not logical to play this. Testing it is just really hard to play it. And then lastly, Gutbreak. Gutbreak is a bit better of a finisher, and that is that when your rearguard in the same column as this attack, so +1 against 10,000 power, your opponent cannot guard with cards that they have on their fields grade, which means if they have a grade 1, they can't guard this attack for grade 1. If they have a grade 2, they can't guard this attack for grade 2. So on and so forth. Nice finisher. The soul doesn't really matter. You have enough soul, but Gutbreak really is just a bit too slow for my liking, in the sense that Gutbreak is mostly a finisher. Even if it's a 20k attacker with guard restrictions and everything, you can just take that 1 point of damage and then just use it, to strike the generation, and then after that you just lose the game from there. So it's like, I don't get the point. A lot of Magnolia's cards are really strange in terms of the niche applications they do, although they are really good, but it takes different metas to tell you what's worth 5,000 yen and what becomes 200 yen the next day. So just keep that in mind when building this deck. It's not bad. None of these cards I've suggested are bad, but it's stuff you should be aware of. Then for grade 1 lineup, it's really easy. We play, for Perfect Guards. We also play, 4 of this guy, and then we play 1 Charis in the right deck. That's Charis. Perfect Guards because we want to survive, makes perfect sense. And lastly, we have this little guy. I really like him, despite the fact that he fails me very often. I like him a lot. So what does he do? Very simple. When placed from the hand, you can Soul Blast 1 if your Vanguard has Sylvan Horn Beast in the name. So it needs to be the Sylvan Horn Beast, right? Like, then you can search the top 5 cards of your deck for Magnolia and add it to your hand, and then you shuffle the deck. Yeah, it works in Magnolia or Magnolia Elder, but in this case, we only have 3 copies of Magnolia. So this skill does whiff, but in the cases that it doesn't whiff, it's really nice. Its main importance here is its second skill, and that is that, when you persona right, the number +10 to your front row applies to your back row as well, and that's a continuous skill. So your back row attackers can now all gain the extra +10 so long as there's 1 copy of this guy around. So do keep that in mind on how good that is. It's effectively Graham Grace. If you know how meta-defining Graham Grace is in the set 8 meta, then you understand the implications of this skill. It has won me a lot of games, just gaining another +30 for free, so yeah. Graham Grace in set 9 though, kind of hard to play with Messiah, I'm gonna be honest. Lastly, our orders, we play 4 copies of Wild Intelligence. Since we are playing around Old Magnolia, then it makes perfect sense for us to play the best of Old Magnolia, am I right? So what does Wild Intelligence do? You play it if you have, 1 Counterblast and your Vanguard is a Magnolia. It has to be specifically this one for the full skill to activate. So you play with Counterblast 1, you mill the top 3 cards of your deck, you superior call 1 card from the grave, from the drop zone with a grade less than or equal than your Vanguard. But if your Vanguard is a Magnolia, specifically Sylvan Horn Beast Magnolia, then you can trigger by calling 2 cards instead of 1. So if you play this card normally, either in, say, the few Zorga people who still exist, or you're playing it with, any other lesser grade of your Vanguard, you only can call 1 card. But the second you use it with Magnolia, you can use it for up to 2 cards. So that means that you can actually play aggressively with Magnolia and then use Wild Intelligence as a form of recuperation to instantly build back your board for large aggression. You go +1 with 1 counterblast, and by milling cards into the drop zone, you can get stronger stuff like Golido. You can improve your quality of attackers back, and it just really helps. Because you Soul Blast and loop a lot, especially with stuff like, say, this guy, which you can Soul Blast out your Sylvan Horn Beast in your soul, like Golido, and then you can just call him out to cycle. So really, it's quite simple in terms of how you see how the deck list is being formed. We have attackers, we have utility, we have searchers, and then we have board building tools. So it makes no exception that our grade 0s, we play 1 over trigger, we play 4 heal, we play 6 crits, and then we play 5 draw. Magnolia is a piece reliant deck, as you probably would have guessed, so it makes perfect sense that we do actually want to find our pieces. So the trigger ratio comes as such. It's not 8 crit 3 draw, we need the draw because our pieces are very high impact. And that wraps up our Magnolia deck profile. I've tested this deck strangely excessively after renting it again. I've had a complete blast with it. I feel that, you know, Magnolia has really put some life into me in terms of what actually defines a rogue deck. That, you know, such silly ideas actually can work as long as you actually, you know, have a consistent line of play and you know what you're doing, and you can cater it towards a specific meta game. This Magnolia is really built towards early rush, and I don't think I can hide that in any shape or the way. The fact that we have, like, you know, stuff like Windsor Pool, I mean, it's really clear what this is for. So in terms of what this deck does, is just to early aggression, and then on turn 3 you just pop off. You have board building tools, you have extra attackers, and then on turn 4, as long as you manage the persona right with the amount of tempo you've built up, it will kill. Now, that being said though, this is one of those decks that you can't just not ride out. You don't want to just don't ride out when fighting against Jet or Messiah, because the amount of rush pressure you have is quite insane. So that's really something you need to keep in mind. You can't just, oh, I just won't ride up against everyone. No, there are some decks that really can push and aggro beyond, and this version of Magnolia is one of them. Elder, I can't say for sure. I've frankly not tested much of Elder, but I've tested a lot with Great Tree Magnolia. I tried it with Inlet Pulse. I didn't really like it. I tried it with a lot of other stuff, but frankly, this is the conclusion I have come to. And, you know, I'm still testing this deck, you know, not that I'm bringing this to Divanga or anything, no. But, you know, it's just a really fun deck that I've enjoyed more than I should in terms of my Dbt09 testing. So, yes, thank you all so much for watching. You know, if you like this video, then, you know, just leave a like and whatnot. Stay safe. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.